All right, in this video, you're going to learn how to create coconut and almond flour. This is an ingredient you might have come across if you're trying to work with baking or certain diets. It's paleo friendly, it's GAPS friendly, it's gluten-free, it's raw, it's organic. It's all this goodness that you can simply and easily make at home in your own kitchen. All right. Whether you are working with paleo or GAPS or raw vegan, or maybe you have no idea what even those terms are, but you're interested in working with almond flour, coconut flour, they are super easy to make at home. Wanted to give you a quick little insight on how to do that. First thing you got to do is take some almonds and soak them. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to create an almond milk, and then we're going to strain it, and we're going to keep that fiber left over, and that's going to be an almond flour. So for instance, if we just took regular raw dried almonds and ground them up, we're not going to get a flour. You'd get an almond meal, and if you ground it too much, you'd get almond butter. The way to get a flour is essentially it's defatted, and we're going to defat it by simply making an almond milk. Coconut milk is exactly the same. We're working with coconut flakes. I kind of like to combine them together as well, and that way you're going to have the perfect consistency for a flour. So almonds, I like to soak for a couple of hours before I create that nut milk. Gets rid of some of the enzyme inhibitors, the tannins. You can see that dark liquid that's being drawn out, that color, that's the tannins from the almonds, and it helps deal with things like phytic acid. So essentially, take a raw, dried almond, soak it for a few hours or overnight. Gets rid of all that, plus it enhances the nutrition. It's gone from a dormant nut or seed to something that's now soaked and is beginning to sprout, and you're going to get more nutrition from that. So soak for a couple hours. You do want to drain that water off, so I'm just going to take it over here to the sink, pour that off, and then you just give it a little rinse. Pour that rinse water off, and you're good to go. All right, so let's put that into our blender. About 1 cup of raw almonds soaked. Next, coconut. And again, you can do this with all coconut, all almond, or even hazelnut. You can pick your nut that you want to work with to create a flour. So we'll do about equal parts. So 1 cup coconut, 1 cup almond. That goes into the blender. Now to create a nut milk, I'd probably in the end be adding more water. It's up to you. I've got a very small blender here. This is about, 4 or 5 cups, volume, maybe a little bit more. And essentially, if I was going to try and create a lot of almond milk or coconut milk, I'd do maybe a 4 parts or 5 parts water to 1 part nut or seed. Here, my goal is really just to create the flour, to kind of defat it. I will absolutely end up using the milk, but it's not my goal, so I don't need as much volume. So take some filtered water or spring water. Pour at the very least a cover. It's probably going to end up being kind of like a 3-to-1 ratio. So you've got 3-4 cups of water in there. Into your blender. We'll blend. All right, so we got that all blended up, and here you do want to strain it. You can use a fine mesh kitchen strainer, but ultimately it's not going to be fine enough. I think cheesecloth is going to be a little tricky, so we've got these kind of like an organic cotton hemp bag. It's a very fine weave, and that does the best job of really keeping in as much of that fiber as possible, because that is our flour right now. So what I'm going to do, you pour that in, and it slowly just gently begins to let the liquid through. We're just going to assist that by giving it a little squeeze here. We're going to get all the milk out, which is awesome and wonderful, and you can use that anywhere you would, any recipe that calls for a milk. You've now got coconut almond milk. That will store in your fridge for up to 3, 4, even 5 days. As it sits, if you do let it sit for a couple of days, it might separate. Just give it a shake and it's all good and back to normal. But essentially for this recipe and our purposes here, we're after that flour. And this is, again, defatting it. If we just ground these up in the blender, our coconut and our almonds, we'd get a meal or a paste, and it's not nearly the same. And it's not going to work for those recipes that call for coconut flour or almond flour. So this is the simplest, easiest way for you to do it. Coconut flakes are very inexpensive. You're just adding water and you're transforming it into flour. All right, so we squeeze that out as much as we can, getting all the liquid out. And inside this bag, we've got our flour. If you're ready to use it, if your recipe calls for it right then and there, go ahead, pop it in. Obviously, at this stage, it is a little bit moist, so you're going to have to adjust your wet-dry ratios. Otherwise, what I do is, if I'm not ready to use it right away or have a little bit of extra, what I'll do is I've got a bag here. So if I have made almond milk or coconut milk or something earlier in the week and I'm not about to use it right away, I'll pop it into a bag, in it goes in the freezer, and then we'll pull from that from the week if we're making pancakes or muffins or whatever it is. Other option there is you can put it on a dehydrator sheet. So if you have a dehydrator at home and you would really actually prefer this flour in a dry state for your recipe, spread that out on a dryer. You can even do it on a baking sheet in the oven on super, super low. But if you do have a dehydrator, you can absolutely spread it out on a sheet, turn it on low, and you've got almond flour. So there you are. Super easy, super simple, gluten-free, paleo-friendly, GAPS-friendly. This is how you make almond and coconut flour.